Hi, everyone. I'm Rena Ninen. Thank you for joining us. President Trump is on his way to Montana today to rally support for Republican congressional candidates. You can see him departing right here from Joint Base Andrews earlier. And in his remarks this evening, the president will undoubtedly address his upcoming decision to fill Justice Anthony Kennedy's seat. According to the Wall Street Journal, the president has narrowed down his list of potential nominees to 3 federal court judges: Amy Coney Barrett, Brett Kavanaugh, and Raymond Kethledge. Mr. Trump held a series of interviews with contenders earlier this week, but the White House is remaining pretty tight-lipped on who's made the cut. President Trump says he's going to make this announcement for the nominee on Monday. Niall Stanage is a White House columnist for The Hill, and he joins us now. So now, what are you hearing about how the president's approaching this process?
Well, look, this is clearly going to be some kind of victory for the president, whatever happens. He is getting the opportunity to change the ideological complexion of the court by replacing a swing vote in terms of Anthony Kennedy with a committed conservative. That would be true of any of the 3 people that you just mentioned. Now, we are hearing some suggestion that the president might favour Brett Kavanaugh, who is slightly older than Amy Coney Barrett, has a bit more experience on the bench. The knock against Kavanaugh is that he's a veteran of the George W. Bush administration, and the president has a well-known suspicion or skepticism of Bush veterans.
You know, it's always interesting when names get leaked from Washington. They're usually leaked for a purpose. What do you think the purpose is that these names were leaked today?
Well, I mean, part of that is just the idea that we know already the president is working off a list of 25 names that was drawn up in conjunction with the Federalist Society, a conservative organisation. I would assume that the purpose of leaking these names is to suggest that they are indeed the front runner. I don't think front runners. It's not misdirection, I don't think. But clearly the president does have an appreciation for the kind of suspense that can be created in these moments. He sees things through a television lens often, and this is the final contestants in the Supreme Court reality show.
Supreme Court reality show. I want to ask you also, you know, you look at sort of these liberal groups that are planning to target Republican Senators Lisa Murkowski, Susan Collins, to block the Supreme Court confirmation, much the way that they tackle the Senate efforts to repeal Obamacare. What's the White House strategy for pushing back on this opposition?
Essentially, it's simply that Republican senators would be expected to vote for a conservative justice selected by a Republican president. They are making a call to party loyalty. And also, Rena, we have to remember, going all the way back to the 2016 campaign, the Supreme Court was a critical issue for conservative voters. It got a lot of them over their misgivings about then candidate Trump's very colourful personal life and the belligerent language he uses, because the Supreme Court is so important. So I think the White House can exert considerable pressure on those moderate senators like Susan Collins, like Lisa Murkowski, to say, look, this is critical. This is going to set the direction of the court potentially for 30 or 40 years, since these potential nominees are comparatively youthful. And so that's a big amount of leverage the White House can use. Okay.
Speaking of pressure, though, President Trump's administration is poised to impose tariffs on about $34 billion of Chinese imports starting tomorrow. That'll include machinery, auto parts, medical devices. We've seen retaliatory efforts for other tariffs. What do you think the Trump administration wants to achieve this go-round?
The Trump administration wants to achieve victory, and I think that one of the things that separates this administration from previous administrations of either party is the view that people win and people lose in these deals. You have to be on the winning side, and a suspicion of the argument that multilateral deals can work in everyone's benefit. We see that not just in trade, but on other issues like climate change, even like the Iran nuclear deal. I do think that the imposition of these tariffs, Rena, will really take us from a trade skirmish, as some administration officials have described it, to a trade war. This is really a pretty full-on battle now between the United States and China on this issue.
And, you know, we've heard China say we're not going to be the first to blink at this point, but who do you think? Is there any sense of whether the U.S. will back down, or is that not really an option at this point?
Technically speaking, China does have more to lose from an all-out trade war than the United States does, but that doesn't necessarily guarantee an outcome. I mean, basically, the United States being a democracy means that its leaders are more liable to be pressured by public opinion. If this trade war were to lead to job losses in electorally crucial states, for example, that could have a real impact. President Trump is very loath to back down. He very rarely does it. So he, so far, is still all guns blazing to win this struggle with China.
So we're already in the middle of midterm primary season now. You know, it's only going to heat up from here on out. We've seen companies announce changes in response to tariffs, notably Harley-Davidson. How do you think the White House is going to try and frame their message as companies really try to take hits?
The White House puts a lot of stock by the idea of America first. It puts a lot of stock in the idea that they are protecting American workers, that President Trump has a particular bond with those workers, especially in manufacturing states that have been devastated by globalization and by other issues. So they think that by making that patriotic argument that they can win the day there, and clearly they are very critical of those companies that have changed policy in a way that is adverse for American workers, even if it might be perceived to be in the best interest of those companies. So I think they can feel that they can shame those companies and make an appeal to heartland voters to keep backing them. What we don't know is whether that calculation is correct or not. Really.
I want to ask you about next week's meeting. The president's going to attend the annual NATO summit. The focus will be on deterring Russian activity, malignant activity. But right after, President Trump will then go on to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. We've seen the rhetoric towards NATO. Is there any chance you think that that summit influences him and Putin's words are sort of the last in his ear?
I think that summit is going to be obviously very keenly watched. Clearly, it is something that holds challenges for the president, given that he is under this broader cloud about alleged Russian collusion in the 2016 election. It's a complicated matter. The president has oftentimes spoken in more warm terms about Mr. Putin and about Russia than we're used to hearing from American presidents. The NATO issue is a big one. American allies are already unsettled by some of the rhetoric that we're hearing out of Washington. But the administration is arguing that the mere fact that this summit is taking place is a deliverable, as they put it. They think that the achievement is in having the summit rather than any specific agreement that might emerge from it.
Now, while I have you, I want to ask you about some breaking news out of the White House just now. President Trump has formally added former Fox News co-president Bill Shine to his staff. He's going to serve as assistant to the president and also deputy chief of staff for communications. This is a man who's very close to Roger Ailes, the CEO of Fox News. What do you make of this hire?
It's another step in the very close relationship between Fox News and this White House. We've seen a number of commentators from Fox either have the president's ear or in some cases actually go into his administration. This one does create some risk because Bill Shine had a controversial role in some of the matters pertaining to Roger Ailes. We won't go too, I'm not confident of going into the specific details of that right now, but it is something that I think critics will look at a lot and question a lot in this White House.
What do you think it is that he picked Shine?
Well, basically, Fox News is a very successful broadcasting organisation. Bill Shine was with it as it rose to such prominence. People are obviously critical of its ideological perceived lean, but Shine, I think, is seen as a gifted communicator. I think the president prizes television communications above all other kinds, and so those things alone would probably recommend Bill Shine to him.
Okay, Niall Stanage, thank you for joining us, Niall.
Thanks, Rena.